Exactly. Very, very important. And so then I think if we want to make some points, the biggest thing you said, we talked about establishing trust,
Mhm.
active listening, using I statements. We're talking about how I feel that this made me, whatever, whatever. Um, and understanding and practicing empathy, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what? Empathy, compassion, um, goes a long way, and quite frankly, I'm not the biggest arguer, I've gotten
Mhm.
old to the point where, you know what, I'm not arguing with you.
Right.
And if this is how you feel today, we're going to sit on that and I'm done. It's not going to make me love you anymore. It's not going to make me love you any less.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, his life is too
But
short. I'm not
that's
going to be
maturity, though.
arguing with people about simple things. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's just not, it's not worth it for me personally.
Right. But I think that definitely has to do with maturity, like where that person is, in their life, right?
Mhm.
Because some people
Mhm.
can't keep, they want to hold on to it and hold grudges, and you know what I'm saying? And sometimes we just have to be able to be like, okay, that's what it is. And like you said, I don't love you any less,
Mhm.
but we just gonna keep that
And I
moving.
think it's important too. You can put people on a timeout for a minute, but make sure you go back after them. Okay. Don't leave
Mhm.
that person in the corner. Okay. Go back after that person and just say, you know what?
Right,
We can end this friendship or relationship.
right.
Again, that communication is necessary because if you leave that person where they are, to me, some people need closure, right? Some people
Mhm.
need, and so you need to go back and get them if you put them on a timeout.
Right. And just to your point, and we'll go on to the next question. Sometimes you're not going to get closure, right?
True.
I've been on the side of
Absolutely.
that. You
Absolutely.
know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so then you have to make peace with yourself, right? You have to be honest with yourself. You have to be authentic with yourself and say, okay, if there was something that I did, and this is now you're talking to yourself, if there was something that I did to end this friendship or this relationship, and I'm not aware, you have to forgive yourself, forgive me, because I'm not really sure what that was, and be able to move on. Because to your point, I love the idea of being able to somebody come back, and provide some clarity. But from my own personal experience, I have to say that I haven't necessarily had that each time. So then I had to forgive myself and move from that.
And move on.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, yes, yes. Next question. What role does nonverbal communication play in relationship dynamics?
I think it plays the top role. Okay. Um, I think energy is everything. Um, and without saying words, your body language can speak volumes. But again, you got to know who your audience is, right?
Mhm.
So, there's been times where I can not say anything or walk into a room and people understand where I'm coming from, whether it be my team at work, they understand my energy when I walk into the room. And
Mhm.
so I oftentimes have to check myself because if I get out of one meeting that has gotten me up to this point,
Right.
I don't want to take what I've just done and put that on my team. It's
Mhm.
unfair to them. It's unfair to me to continue carrying that energy, from place to place. I
Right.
don't want to do that to people. It's not fair for them to have to feel, what I'm feeling, particularly if I'm trying to get work done.
Mhm.
But in relationships, again, if that person knows you, they know how
Oh
to give
yeah.
you that you need, right?
Oh
They
yeah.
know how to kind of pump the brakes and not ask a whole lot of questions. Or if they know that you don't mind questions, maybe that's the time to say, hey, how was your day? How are things going?
Right.
Um, but I think you should check in with your person and be respectful. If they're not willing to talk or wanting to talk at this moment, it
Mhm.
should be all good.
Right. And know what that looks like. I just had a conversation with a male friend of mine, and he was saying how, like, in relationships, like they could be, on the phone or whatever, and then the tone changes.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so we have to be mindful of that. Like, okay, if something made you mad, then speak on it appropriately. Give that person time to be able to say, okay, well, I apologize that I didn't mean it that way, or, but if you're going on and then now you have this whole other tone, that's not communicating.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. And you can communicate without saying a word. That's huge. That is huge. Your presence, your energy, people can feel that. And oftentimes when I go into a place, I check myself. You know what I mean? I check my resting face. I'm trying to make sure that I am, smiling, so that people don't think that I'm mad or angry, because my resting face tends to be very solemn, if you will, and nothing is wrong at all. So I kind of check myself mentally, so that I don't put that energy on other people.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up energy, because that was my post I made earlier today about energy. Like, that is a real thing, and we have to keep that in mind, right? When we're talking about just being out in the world.
Yes.
We're giving off energy and we're taking in energy. And I'm very, keen on, like, if I'm going into a space and it doesn't feel right for me, especially now, like, as I've really worked on myself and going on this healing journey. And let me be clear, it's ongoing, everybody.
It's a journey, right?
Everybody think I'm healed because I'm still in practice. But just going into situations, making sure that I'm being intentional about what I'm giving off, because it cannot be nice sometimes. And if I go into a space now at this point in my life and it doesn't feel right, that's our gut, that's our intuition. I'm going to move around. Like, yeah, I don't know, if this is making me feel how I want to feel in this moment, and it's okay to remove yourself from that.
Absolutely. And you have to know when you're feeling a certain way so that you're not putting that on others, right? And so for myself, I know that I like my alone time. I like my me time. And if I come upon that, I need to take it. I need to find a way to take that so that I don't make other people feel badly, because maybe I'm not talking as much. Maybe I'm not engaging as much. So that's me having to do some self-check to say, you know what, I probably shouldn't go this time because I'm tired. I want to just I don't want to be in a room full of people and I'm sitting in the corner,
Right. Or the Debbie Downer, or the, pitiful. We don't do that.
Absolutely. And I just want to be
cognizant
to say no.
Exactly. So nonverbal cues, active listening. We're talking about this body language, like you can send off mixed messages, So the next question.
Okay.
How can we navigate conflicts and disagreements through effective communication?
Repeat that question again, Monique.
How can we navigate conflicts and disagreements through effective communication?
So that's a tough one. Just because people handle conflicts very differently. There are people who go from 0 to 10, in 2.2 seconds. There are people who fester and allow things to fester in them. And then there's people like me. I really don't let a lot of things bother me anymore. And it comes across as not caring, but it's really for my own self-care, and that's kind of where I've gotten, in my life. And others may not like it, but it's okay. I think that talking to people, and again, as I mentioned earlier, you put somebody on a timeout because you're not feeling what they said or what they did, you need to go back to that person. You need to go back to that person and take them out of timeout and let them know what that was about, and the why behind something, and help people understand where you're at. Because if you assume Okay, we know where assumptions get us, right? You can't always assume where people's mindset is, okay?
Exactly.
And if someone has offended you, if there's some sort of conflict going on, you need to be transparent and let people know how it made you feel.
Right.
I think it's a detriment to your own self-care to walk around not letting people know how they made you feel. And you have to be very poignant at when those conversations happen. And I'm not saying to embarrass people or to, put people on Front Street and crowds and all of that kind of stuff. But I think you should be grown enough to, pull people aside to say, hey, you know what? I don't like how you treated me.
Right.
And I need you to understand. Because you treat people how to treat you. They don't get to do what they want to do.
Right. And sometimes people will, you cut people off and they're not, like you're saying, they're not understanding why they got cut off. But I think that goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier about the maturity level, of people being able to, take breaks and separate themselves, like you're saying, the little timeout, when it's needed. Not trying to win an argument, like I don't even want to necessarily say argument, but the conversation, there doesn't have to be a winner and a loser. And I think if people think about it in that manner, right? Like we're just having this conversation to get some understanding. I'm going to listen to what you're saying. You're going to listen to what I'm saying. And then we can walk away whole, each person, rather than I told them, like, okay. And I guess that sometimes there is, some point to that. But at the same time, when we're talking about like nurturing and having good relationships, communicating effectively, we want to be making sure that we're being kind at the end of the day. Like
absolutely. And again, you never know what people are going through, even if it's your person, it's important to pay attention, to patterns, behaviors. And I'll be quite honest with you, in my relationships, when I have to put people on timeout, I make sure that I go back after them to say, you know what, that wasn't cool.
Right.
You made me feel this way, to allow them and give them an opportunity to save face, and say, I didn't mean it that way. And hopefully if they're your friend, okay, they're not going to allow you to put them in timeout. They're going to say, hey, wait, timeout. I didn't mean it like that.
Right.
And so just being able to have that open conversation is just very important. And, to me, you get your practice with your girlfriends, what I mean? That's where the practice begins, so that when you get into those relationships, with your husband, with your wife or whatever, you have already learned how to have those conversations, and a lot of people just haven't had that practice yet. Or they feel like, because they're a grudge holder, they do one thing and you cut them off at the knees. That's not fair. That's not really a way to kind of preserve friendships.
Right. But I think there also has to be two things, some discernment in that and meeting people where they are. So when I speak of discernment in that, like there are some times when people will show you who they are and you have to believe it and receive it. Right.
Absolutely.
But then there's also some
church finger out the door. Yes, I get it.
Exactly. But then there's also some times where when I say meet people where they are, like I want to make sure that people understand people's lives are heavy. You know what I'm saying? And people are going through things, suffering in silence because they don't have somebody to talk to. Right? That they don't have the tools, the wherewithal to even, try to cope and figure it out on their own. So then it comes off as them, being harsh or like you said, angry, or those facial expressions, all those things. So I just say, I want to, if you don't walk away from nothing else from this, from this session, I want people to walk away with knowing like you have to really meet people where they are and think about whatever could have gone on with them and why they're acting that way. Not for it to be an excuse, but to just allow some compassion about, you know what I'm saying, people losing their loved ones or, stuff going on at work, or the kids is acting out. I mean, there could be so many pieces. And I think that we've lost that because the world is so, everything is, it's now, you get a text message, or you get a phone call, it's now. Or, you have people like, well, I know you got your phone all day. Well, like for me, yes, I work with my phone all day, but I'm also working, right? So I might listen. I might make a post and get in the shower, right? So, and then somebody texts me, well, I made that post and hopped right in the shower, literally. So now I can't get back to you in the second that you want me to get back to you. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many different scenarios like that where it's like, people have to understand, like, people, yes, they have their phones, right? But I remember, and this was years ago, when I was like, I don't want to text, I want to talk. So if it's after 5, call me. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like, we don't talk no more. Everybody texting, and you know what I'm saying? So you lose that, that connection of being able to communicate with somebody.
And that's a big deal for me. And I think that's generational, because some of the younger kids, they are more text. They will do the lives and all of those types of things, which I'm not necessarily into. But that communication has gotten lost when we started texting. It's like, no, I'm not texting you a book about how I feel.
Right.
I'm going to pick up the phone and talk to you, and we're going to have a quick conversation or a long conversation, whatever you prefer.
Right.
That communication, yes, a bit of that has gotten lost with our technology today.
For sure. Okay, our next question. And we kind of fed right into this. How can technology impact relationship communication, both positively and negatively?
Well, let's start with the negative first. Okay, let's just get that out the way. Okay,
get it out the way.
I am a believer that cell phones has aided in ruining some relationships. Okay, I won't blame it on the cell phone, because I blame it on the person who allowed that to happen, right? But I think that additional piece of communication has allowed, again, one too many people to the party oftentimes, and people get sneaky. People, start doing things that they know that they should not be doing, that will create some distrust in your relationships, right? And I think that is really a big thing in terms of technology, where on the other hand, I think that technology has enhanced or could enhance communication of those who are not necessarily good at it, because you get to send pictures or emojis, some of those unspoken words that, when my friends send me, a little smiley face or something that, where they just maybe want to say hi, or they want to say, I'm thinking about you, it gives them the opportunity to do that as well. But again, I think like anything, people always find a way to do bad with something that was meant for good, right? But I think that technology also can really enhance a relationship, because there's no reason why you cannot text your boo and say, hey, baby, how you doing during the day? You know what I'm saying? You may not be able to pick up the phone. You may be able to just send a card, to say, you know what, you crossed my mind. Whatever that is, you should be able to share that. And I think technology has helped with that.
Right. For sure. I think to add to that, like FaceTiming, like I wasn't really a big FaceTimer, but like, for example, when we're talking about relationship, like with my kids, we do a lot of FaceTiming, because they're all in different states. So that's like one of our things, that we're able to do to stay connected. And like you said, the emojis.
People, you know what I mean? Makes that connection that much stronger.
Right.
If you're not able to see them in person.
Exactly.
So that's really,
yeah, definitely. I don't know about what your thoughts are on technology and communication as it relates to like work, because I know you do a lot of that in your work, and especially since the C, I ain't gonna say the word, you know, when that happened, you know, it kind of changed the world, you know, and how we were able to communicate. So what are your thoughts on that as it relates to like your work and anything else you want to share?
So I think generational again. I am more of the person who likes to pick up the phone to get things done at work, where I have a team of younger generation folks who will lean and wait on me.
Millennials.
And I think sometimes people are not checking their emails as often as they should. Things get buried, okay, because you get a ton of emails throughout the day.
Right.
And so I have pushed them to kind of use both. You know, it's okay to use an email, but if you're not getting a response in a couple of days, you need to pick up the phone and make people answer your call and get your questions answered. Because quite frankly, I need my answer. So I need to expedite that. And so we're working on trying to blend that communication, because it's been all basically the email framework of communicating. And I've tried to kind of give them some examples on, you know, depending on who you're working with, you know, in terms of your business unit, they may respond to a phone call before they respond to an email. You know, because maybe they're out in the field and they have their cell phones with them and more readily available than their laptops. Communication also, I think we talked about this earlier, before you respond to an email, taking a step back, reading the email clearly and precisely before you respond. And here's another thing, making sure that you realize who you're responding to, okay? Just because you are on an email with several people does not mean that you need to respond to several people. You may need to just respond to the person, you know, who you need to do that to. And you want to make sure that you're not dragging people into your mess. And I guess that statement can go a long way, either way, whether it's a phone call, whether it's relationships, whether it's email or work. But just being cognizant of who you're communicating with at work and making sure that you are being reasonable, you know what I mean? And making sure that your tone is clear, making sure that you are not putting off a negative energy in regards to a particular situation. I think that's really important. And then people will know how to receive you.
But I think it's also, just to your point, on when you're on the receiving end of that, to not gather your own interpretation, right? Because you'll get a text message or email, you'll be like, well, what are they talking about? It's the email, it's how you reading it. That ain't necessarily, now we of course know we have probably gotten some emails and some text messages and it meant what it said. But at the same time, like I've had my kids read to me, well, Mom, what do you think about this, you know, message? And they're reading the message. And I'm like, well, why don't you just call them?
Absolutely.
We can solve this real easy by picking up the phone, rather than you know, you're trying to interpret this whole message. And we don't know, maybe that person, again, going back to meeting people where they are, maybe that person was doing something, you know, working or in an email and tried to hurry up and respond to your or whatever it is. Right. So we have to think about how we're receiving and interpreting the information as well. I think that's important.
Yeah. And you have to understand and be able to select which form of media or form of technology should you use given the situation. Right. If there's a conversation that requires a phone conversation, don't hide behind a text. It's very easy to hide behind a text with your words. Or maybe you need to have a face-to-face conversation. I love face-to-face conversations because your face can tell it all.
That go back to the body language. Yes.
Absolutely. And so some people are not always up for that though, right? So it's like, you want to make sure that, you know, you can discern which type of communication is needed based on that conversation.
Right, for sure. Now, do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to share on? Believe it or not, it's 6:50, so we actually
Oh, wow. Time has gone on.
Look, you know, we
I-
can
you
talk
know
for
what? I
hours
think
and
just
hours.
One final thought. What'd you say?
I said, you know, we can talk for hours and hours.
And hours and hours, yes.
Right.
I think just one final thought with regards to communication is not to be afraid of it, not to have apprehension, be able to customize the way you communicate with people, and approach it with integrity, and approach it with compassion, is
Right.
the word I heard you use earlier. And I think people would be more apt to trust you, communicate back with you, and make those relationships stronger.
Right. I agree. I thank you, my friend, my soror,
You
for
are
taking
welcome.
this time out of
Welcome.
your Monday evening to chat with me. Make sure this is for you, Sean, when you come out of the live, because I know you said you kind of knew. Make sure you save it,
Okay.
because it's going to ask you, do you want to save or discard? So make sure you save it, and then it'll automatically come to me, and then we can share it on both sides.
Okay.
So I think when I share, I think mine goes to Facebook as well.
Okay.
But this was really good.
It was, and I'm glad you taught me something. See, you can learn anytime. There it is.
There it is. It's all, listen, it's always a lesson to be received. We just got to be willing to receive it, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Remember, the
Thank
shift
you
is
for
happening
having me.
now.
I appreciate it.
Yes, yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I got two things to stop. Okay, we're gonna stop this.